The observation deck of the Zenthara battle cruiser hummed with the low thrum of gravitational stabilizers as Orla pressed her scaled hand against the transparent aluminum viewport. Beyond the barrier, Earth hung like a blue and white marble against the velvet darkness of space, a planet that should have fallen 3 cycles ago. Commander Orla, her tactical officer's voice crackled through the comlink embedded in her cranial ridge. The human has agreed to meet. Orla's triple-jointed fingers curled into a fist. One human. One singular, impossible human who had single-handedly decimated 3 of her finest assault teams. The Zenthara Empire had conquered 47 star systems across 12 parsecs. Their warriors were bred for combat, their exoskeletons enhanced with nanotech armor, their reflexes augmented to process information at speeds that would liquefy organic neural tissue. And yet, Alexander Chen had stopped them all. "Bring him to the negotiation chamber," Orla commanded, her voice modulated through her translator to remove any trace of the uncertainty that gnawed at her confidence. "Deploy full containment protocols. Gravitational suppressors at maximum yield." "Commander, with respect, the suppressors didn't work last time." Orla's inner eyelid flickered, a Zenthara expression of profound frustration. "I'm aware, Lieutenant. Deploy them anyway." The negotiation chamber was a sphere of reinforced durasteel, 30 meters in diameter, with a single entrance that sealed behind Alexander as he stepped inside. Orla watched from the observation booth as the human walked to the center of the chamber with an unhurried gait that bordered on casual. He looked ordinary, no visible cybernetic enhancements, no powered exoskeleton. He wore simple civilian clothing, dark pants, a grey shirt, and scuffed boots that had seen better days. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and there was a tiredness in his brown eyes that spoke of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. "Gravitational field active," her technician reported. "He should be experiencing approximately 8 times Earth-normal gravity." Alexander stood in the center of the chamber, apparently unbothered. He looked up at the observation booth, though the one-way shielding should have prevented him from seeing inside. "I know you're watching, Orla," he said, his voice transmitted through the chamber's audio pickups. "Can we skip the intimidation theater? I've had a long day." Orla's secondary heart skipped a beat. How did he know her name? More importantly, how was he standing upright under 8 gravities? She activated her own microphone. "You've killed 43 of my warriors, human. Warriors bred for combat since hatching, enhanced with technology your species has yet to discover. How?" Alexander sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Can I sit? This gravity thing is actually getting a bit annoying." "You should be crushed into paste." "Yeah, well," he shrugged and sat cross-legged on the floor as if he were in his living room. "Your intelligence is incomplete. That's why you keep losing." Orla descended from the observation booth, entering the chamber through a secondary entrance. Her own powered armor compensated for the increased gravity, servos whining softly with each step. She approached Alexander cautiously, her hand resting on the plasma sidearm at her hip. Up close, he looked even more unremarkable. No visible weapons, no armor, just a tired human sitting on the floor of her ship. "Explain," she demanded. Alexander looked up at her, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes that made her biological threat assessment systems spike to maximum alert. It wasn't anger or fear. It was something older, something that predated language itself. "Patience. Your species evolved on a world with 0.8 Earth gravities," Alexander began, his tone reminiscent of a professor addressing a slow student. "Low radiation, stable climate, abundant resources. You never had to fight for survival, not really. You developed tool use, then space flight, then conquest, all very linear, very predictable. And humans. Humans are from a world that's tried to kill us since we climbed down from the trees." Alexander stood, and despite the gravity that should have pinned him to the floor, he moved with fluid grace. "Our sun bombards us with radiation. Our planet's magnetic field fluctuates. We have ice ages and asteroid impacts. supervolcanoes. We share our world with megafauna that can tear us apart and microorganisms that can kill us in days. He took a step toward her, and Orla's hand tightened on her weapon. We didn't develop intelligence to contemplate the stars, Commander. We developed it to survive another day, and we've been at it for millions of years. That doesn't explain. Your warriors, Alexander interrupted, are impressive, fast, strong, well-armed, but they've never had to hunt an animal that's faster and stronger than them with nothing but rocks and teamwork. They've never had to outthink a predator while nursing infected wounds and borderline starvation. Your species optimized for conquest, mine optimized for survival. Orla's tactical computer was running combat simulations in real time, calculating her odds if this conversation turned violent. The numbers weren't encouraging. You're enhanced, she said. You must be. No baseline organic can. I'm not enhanced, Alexander said flatly. I'm a completely average human, maybe slightly below average actually. I was a cargo hauler before your invasion. I'm not special, Orla. That's what you don't understand. He moved closer, and Orla found herself backing up despite her training, despite her armor, despite every tactical advantage she supposedly possessed. When your first assault team landed in Seattle, I was having coffee. I watched your warriors march down Fifth Avenue in their armor, weapons charged, absolutely confident. And I watched them collapse one by one as they realized that Earth's atmospheric composition was slowly oxidizing their internal cybernetics. Your engineers designed your enhancements for your homeworld's atmosphere: 60% nitrogen, 35% oxygen, 5% trace gases. Earth's higher oxygen concentration created a cascade failure in your nanosystems. Orla's translator struggled with the human concept Alexander expressed next, something between amusement and profound sadness. You never tested your troops in our environment. You assumed conquest would be like all the others. The second team, Orla said, her voice quieter now. They had environmental seals, backup systems. They had arrogance, Alexander corrected. I watched them from my apartment window, watched them scan the buildings, confident in their thermal imaging, their motion sensors. They never considered that I'd learned to mask my thermal signature using simple insulation, and that I'd studied your technology from the debris of your first team. He smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Your warriors are trained to fight wars in space, Orla, clean environments, predictable physics. I grew up in a species that invented biological warfare when we were still living in caves. We poisoned water supplies before we had written language. We created ambush tactics before we had agriculture. You're trying to frighten me. No, Alexander said softly. I'm trying to make you understand. Your third assault team, the one you sent yesterday, they were your best. Adaptive AI systems, quantum encrypted communications, weapons that could level city blocks. They lasted 7 minutes. Orla's records confirmed this. 7 minutes from deployment to total casualty. Do you know what humans do when faced with overwhelming force? Alexander asked. We improvise. We adapt. We find the weak point in the armor, the flaw in the system, the assumption the enemy made that turned out to be wrong. Your team's quantum encryption was top tier, unbreakable by any conventional means. But quantum systems are vulnerable to observation. It's a fundamental principle of physics. I used a modified laser pointer and some magnets from a refrigerator to create enough quantum decoherence to crash their entire communication network. That's impossible. It's what my species does, Commander. We make the impossible routine. We went to our moon with computers less powerful than the device I used to order pizza. We split the atom before we had antibiotics. We're not stronger than you or faster than you. We're just more desperate. Alexander stood now at arm's reach, well within striking distance. Orla's combat systems screamed warnings, but she found herself paralyzed by a realization that crept up her spine like ice water. She was afraid. Not of Alexander specifically, but of what he represented. An entire species of beings who had weaponized desperation, who had turned adversity into innovation, who saw every obstacle as a puzzle to be solved rather than a barrier to be overcome with force. "What are you, human?" The question escaped her translator before she could stop it. The same question her dying warriors had transmitted in their final moments. Alexander's expression softened slightly. "I'm a tired cargo hauler who wants to go home. I'm someone who watched your ships arrive and realized that if I didn't act, everyone I've ever loved would die. I'm human, Orla, and that means I don't give up, ever. It's not in our programming." He turned and walked toward the chamber exit, moving through the 8-gravity field, as if it were nothing more than a strong wind. "You can leave Earth," he said without turning around. "Withdraw your forces, go back to your empire, and we'll pretend this was a misunderstanding. Or you can send more warriors, more weapons, more ships. But understand this, you're not fighting an army. You're fighting a species that learned to survive in hell and decided to make it home." The chamber door opened for him. Orla's technicians had apparently decided that containing him was pointless, and Alexander paused at the threshold. "We named our planet Earth," he said quietly. "It means ground. The thing you stand on, solid, unmovable. There's a reason for that, Commander. Think about it." Then he was gone, leaving Orla standing alone in the gravitational field she'd designed to restrain him. 3 hours later, the Zenthara battle cruiser and its escort fleet began their retreat vector out of Earth's solar system. In her final report to the Emperor, Commander Orla wrote a single recommendation that would reshape the Empire's entire expansion doctrine. Avoid Sol 3, the species that does not recognize the concept of surrender. They are not warriors. They are something far more dangerous. They are survivors. On Earth, Alexander Chen returned to his apartment, microwaved some leftover pizza, and fell asleep on his couch with the television still playing. Tomorrow, he'd need to report back to the Resistance coordinators. Tonight, he was too tired to care about being humanity's accidental savior. Outside his window, the stars shone undimmed, and Earth continued its eternal rotation, home to a species that had looked at the universe's challenges and decided that giving up simply wasn't an option. The end.